One. Hello, everybody. Hello.
Hey,
it is Happy Wind Down.
Have you had too much already? Happy
No.
Wind Down Day.
It is Wind Down Day. I'm just going to move that out of the way. So
I know. I'm very precariously balanced right now with everything trying to face towards the window and get some light. But hello, everyone, and welcome. Happy Friday. And
Happy Friday. What exciting happened to you this week? In your week, Gina?
It is weird. My week has been very chopped up because on Wednesday I drove all day, getting here to Arizona, staying down here. But it's been a busy week with lots of things going on work-wise, so that's always good. And have some meetings actually set up while I'm down here in Arizona with some potential clients, so that's always fun. And yeah, how about you? What are you doing? What have you done this week?
Well, we've been working on new videos. Which we had shot but needed to be re-edited and a bunch of stuff. So that's taken up a lot of time. And I'm going to an art retreat for the weekend. So I'm
very fun. And on Monday, I think it was Tuesday, I think. I can't remember days this week, but I think it was Tuesday. And we're going to talk about piggybacking, but it was Construction Girl, a big event helping young girls in high school get into and explore the fields of construction and transportation. And so one of our clients is a construction company, and we went to their event, and they had sponsored this. And so I got to wear a pink hard hat and be construction girl for the day.
Now, so there will be those who argue that the fact that the hard hat was pink in itself is not a good thing.
Although I loved it, because I was like, okay, if I have to wear a hard hat, I want it to look cute.
Yeah, like Mary Kay.
They did have pink safety glasses, but that is a good point. But all their logos and everything is pink. Construction Girl and Transportation Girl. But it was a fun event, and seeing all these young girls and them exploring different careers that aren't the typical careers that high schools point them to was really fascinating, and chatting with a lot of them. So yeah, it was a fun day.
And having events like that kind of leads us to the topic for today, which is what we call hitching a ride, or essentially piggybacking on things that are happening to drive customer engagement in our business. And I guess there are lots of ways to drive customer engagement. What does customer engagement actually mean, do you think, for you? Like, what is it? How do you know if you're doing it right?
I mean, to me, it's really, which social media is all about, is starting or facilitating a conversation. So, it's getting conversations going or extending conversations. So after wind down, let's continue the conversations in our Facebook groups. To me, that's engagement, because someone is interested.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think for me, because we live in such a share economy, it's not just how they engage with me or with others in the brand. It's how often also they share
because if they're sharing, aren't they carrying that conversation out to their audience?
Absolutely, carrying the conversation out to their audience. Absolutely. And that's getting more and more difficult to encourage people to do, is share the conversation and share what's happening in our brands. And if you look at some of the most successful brands in the world, they do that really well. And the specific tactic that I get always so excited about, which we call hitch a ride, and I think is so awesome, is all of the different holidays or events or whatever's going on that brands can hitch a ride on, or piggyback, for lack of a better word, to help tell their brand story. And it can be fun, and there are a ton of examples out there.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good way not only to get engagement during that event or that holiday or that whatever it is, but it's also a good way to draw new people to you who may not have ever been exposed to your brand. Right. So when you hitch a ride, it could be that you're hitching a ride on your own event. It could be that you're hitching a ride on someone else's event. It could be you're hitching a ride on a holiday. Yeah. There's different ways to kind of hitch a ride and extend that conversation or build on that conversation that's already going. Social media is always about, there's always somebody, which the bigger brands have the opportunity to have more people, but there's always something to say. It's a matter of how do you get involved in the conversation when it's not can start it.
Yeah. And I think from our point of view, especially in terms of creating experiences, we always want to look for that opportunity to create a really neat experience. And whenever I see an example of hitching a ride, I always get so excited. So one of my favorites was a bar in London that's called the Smith and Whistle. And on National Dog Day, they turned it into the Smith and Whistle and Max. And they actually created non-alcoholic, like a drink menu for dogs. Everything served in like silver dog bowls. It became dog friendly. But the reason that this was so cool is that the pub, had realized that many of their patrons were pet lovers.
Yeah.
And so doing this on National Dog Day was not just something interesting to do, but it was something that they knew that would appeal to their target audience. And of course, it was so cool that tons of people not only went, and to your point, not only did a lot of new people come into the pub, but everybody shared pictures of it and talked about it and made all of this fuss.
And it's interesting because I just learned about, so Casper is a mattress company, very hipster company, Casper mattresses, and they hitched a ride on the trend of napping, which is kind of interesting. And they kind of hitched a ride on their own, napping. Well, they're a mattress company.
Okay, so very strategic.
Yeah, so they kind of looked at, the popularity of napping and power naps, and they opened up a napping center where people go and pay $25 in New York City for a $45 nap. It's open right now, and it's called the Dreamery, I think. And when you walk in, you get PJs. You don't get to keep them, but you have PJs that they give you. I know it's kind of gross, but
wear them?
They must wash them or something, because they give you PJs. They give you some beauty products to put on while you're napping. But for 45 minutes, you go in and nap, and you pay them. For now, what they're doing though is they're also getting advertisement for their mattresses. So I thought that's an interesting concept. They've hitched a ride on this whole trend of power naps and people talking about power naps, and so they're making money off of it, which is interesting.
That's so cool, because when we talk about hitch a ride, we talk about hitching a ride on a holiday, or hitching a ride on an event, or hitching a ride on a cultural event. But hitching a ride on a trend is a whole other category.
Right, right.
Great. What a great idea.
I mean, you can look at what are trends. It's hard to be proactive when you look at things like Twitter trends. What are the trending ththings going on right now? And if you go to Twitter Home, which I look at every day, and just see what are some of the top trends of the moment. Now, being on the West Coast, or in Denver, I kind of get a jump start a little bit, because I start seeing what starts trending early, and you can kind of jump in and not be too far behind. But you might see something that, like today, it's National Farmers Day, and that was a trending topic on Twitter. So when you look at the trending topic, then if it matches your brand, or if you can hitch a ride on it quick enough, then you can do something. And some of them you can be a little more proactive, because they're coming up, they're events or days.
Yeah, and I think you have some really good suggestions, which we'll get to in a minute, about how to keep track of those. So I agree with you. There are another way to describe what you're talking about with the trends is what we call newsjacking, right? So whatever's happening in the day, and that requires you to be quite proactive. And chances are that you're not going to be able to pull together a huge, big experience, but you could create an experience on social media or something that's particularly that applies to that trend. The other thing, though, with holidays and things like that, or a long-term trend like napping, with holidays and things like that, is there are, correct me if I'm wrong, there are all kinds of places you can go and find out, in addition to the traditional holidays. And at this time of year, we've got a bunch of them coming up. We've got Thanksgiving, or your Thanksgiving, and Halloween, and Christmas, and New Year's, and all of those. But where do you go to find out about events or holidays that you might be able to hitch a ride on?
Well, there's a bunch of websites, but there's one called holidayinsights.com. There's also another one called Bazaar Holidays. But a lot of those have a button that say, add this to your Google Calendar. And so I've done that, where I just click on the button that says, add it to your Google Calendar, and it puts all those random holidays on my calendar so that I see them coming up.
That's
because a
great
lot of
idea.
times, again, and that's how, like, the National Name Your Car Day, like, who would have known about that one? And that was like last week, but I saw that one, and so I created a post, and it got a lot of engagement. It got everybody talking about whether their cars had names. On Twitter, the conversation went on for a couple days with people, and people were sending me videos and pictures of their cars. And so sometimes you can get ahead of it, and sometimes you see it that day. If you can get ahead of it, you can plan. Like, maybe you do a webinar around the topic, or you do a video for that topic.
And you'll put those links in comments, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Actually,
trying
I
to
do it
see.
from my phone.
I can't see any comments right now. Maybe
yeah.
because I don't have it open. Okay, and so we'd love to hear from you. Are there things at your brand or that you have seen other brands do that hitch a ride on cultural events or holidays? One of the other ones I saw recently that I got really excited about was Barbie, Mattel.
Yeah, National Girl Day.
2 days ago was International Day of the Girl.
Right.
And they, hi Bob and hi Sarah.
Hi Bob, hi Sarah.
They created, so obviously this is something that they planned for in advance.
Right.
And they created something called the Dream Project. And it's all about empowering girls. And they did a beautiful video. I will put the link to the video in the comments. They did a beautiful video, but it's much bigger than that. It's this whole project and sponsorship and investment in getting a little bit like your Construction Girl Day, getting girls involved in non-traditional, perhaps careers or things like that. So it was very powerful. And then another one that I love is the Burger King, who did an experience on Good Samaritan Day. Now, I don't know who would have known it was Good Samaritan Day, but obviously Burger King did. And so what they did is they parked a car by the side of the road that looked like it was on fire. And any Good Samaritan who stopped to help got to come up. And when they got to the front of the car wasn't on fire. It was this huge Burger King grill, and they were served a Whopper on site. But again, they hitched a ride on Good Samaritan Day. So the more you can get a jump on this, and of course, all of these examples, the examples you've given, I've given, are all very 5S, and they're all very strategic. They help tell the story of your brand, right?
Right. Yeah, and some people hitchhike on an event in a very inappropriate way, and I see this a lot at conferences. So there'll be a hashtag for a conference, and people just start posting that hashtag with their posts that have nothing to do with it. They do nothing to try to tie in. And then people just see you as a spammer. So you want to make sure that it's appropriate for your brand, or you've put a good spin on it, like Burger King. That's a good spin for national. I mean, it has nothing to do with burgers, but they made it. They made it. Like, but you think of National Good Samaritan, you don't think of burgers.
Yeah.
You know?
But that's what I find fascinating, and in fact, we haven't done it yet, and we're going to do it next week. Is you take some of these things that you know are coming up in advance, and you sit down and brainstorm by asking yourself, okay, for example, I saw one for Mother's Day, and it was an aspirin brand in Europe, and they did a print ad that said, if your mother had had a headache, you wouldn't be here, or something like that. But
now that's clever.
That's very clever. To do that, you'd have to do some tangent thinking and sit down and go, okay, Mother's Day, aspirin. What possible connection could we make? Because it's all about the connections. Burger King, Good Samaritan Day. What possible connection could we make? That's the thought process that needs to happen.
And it's interesting because Motrin did one and got slammed for it, but it was, they hitchhiked on the concept of moms. They were trying to tie into mom bloggers, carrying their baby in backpacks, saying that if you're carrying your backpack all day, you need Motrin. And the mom blogger community went insane because they were saying, oh, so you're saying we shouldn't be carrying our babies and blah, blah. And they took the site down. So you do want to make sure that you've got to think through, how are we piggybacking and hitchhiking on this? Well,
and at the risk of repeating myself, and you need to run it through the 5 S's, right? Yeah, so what Motrin missed was the seductive piece, because their target audience did not find that seductive at all.
At all. Versus the other way of saying you wouldn't be here if mom had a headache is funny and seductive. Yes. And that is an interesting, you really have to look at when you're hitching a ride. Now, some holidays make perfect sense for your brand, but if you're not planning ahead, then you can miss the opportunity to go bigger than what you could. So if you've got a holiday coming up, think through, could I do something bigger, like a webinar or a live event somewhere? Could I show up and do something, volunteer somewhere? We have a client that it's on National Stress Day. They're a massage organization, a franchise. And so they planned these big things where they were giving out cards at, where finding stressful spots where people are under stress in New York City and San Francisco, all the big cities, and they're handing out these. So, you can really hitch a ride if you plan ahead. Yeah. Or it could be something simple, doing videos these days ahead of time is an easy one.
And I think in terms of at least the holidays, there's the two categories, right? There's the traditional holidays and then there's the perhaps non-traditional holidays. And I think sometimes it's harder to stand out on the traditional holidays. You really have to put your creative thinking hat on to come up with something for Christmas or Halloween. Not that we shouldn't do it.
Right. But be prepared.
Yes, you need to be prepared, and you need to go, in addition to asking yourself what strategic connection you can make, you need to ask yourself, well, what do most people usually do? So, maybe a lot of people, I don't know, put a boo on their online store, for Halloween or something like that. Or, these prices will scare you, they're so good, or things like that. But it's kind of like, how do we go beyond the obvious? And then, of course, there are the non-traditional holidays, or what I would call the unusual holidays or events, the ones that we've been describing, which I think is where the money is, the golden goose. Because if you can get on those, just like your post, I saw your post about the car thing, and I thought, how cool is that? And I saw the engagement it was getting, and that's just because it doesn't need to be some complicated thing. I mean, the 5th S is for simple. All you need to do is put something out there that's strategic. And it was, of course, strategic for you because you're a social media person. So
I was going to say, now, did it help my business? It doesn't tie in with my business, but that was just to get engagement that day. But let's say that I was a car dealer. Like, I look at that and go, how does a car dealer not stand out on that day and miss that one? I didn't hear of any car dealers jumping in on that opportunity. So, another thing to do is go to a site like Hashtagify. I'll put that in the chat, Hashtagify.com, because you can do a search ahead of time. So if you know that you've got a big day coming up, do some research on who are the influencers who have used that hashtag before. Right. What are some of the, and again, it depends on how obscure that, National Name Your Car Day or Name Your Car Day probably isn't going to, it'll show you the trend from last year. Or anybody that's used it since then. But sometimes doing a little research, you might be able to piggyback with someone else and, and hitch a ride together with another influencer or another brand and do something bigger than you might have done alone. So that's another possibility, because on some of these holidays, when you go and look up how many hits a certain holiday got, and you say, okay, there were 50 million posts using that tag, your content's going to disappear in that flood.
And that's the flip side of it, right? Is everybody goes, and we had this experience recently with my brand when we did the whole customer experience day thing. But there's so many people using it that the content doesn't matter whether the content's any good or not. It just gets lost.
Yeah. So but it's a good opportunity to maybe offer something. So if you look at it and say, how am I going to get exposure? That's one way to hitch a ride. It could be, how can I deliver something to my current clients?
Yes.
And hitch a ride on this holiday to make it, I don't care how much exposure I'm going for. Maybe I'm going to use the day as an opportunity to do something of service to my clients or my employees or my community.
To my list.
Yeah. Then it doesn't matter who sees it. It's really going bigger on an event for that reason.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, is that we can hitch a ride on a bunch of different things for a bunch of different objectives, for a bunch of different types of audiences. So Yes. So traditional or non-traditional holidays, how can you turn that around and maybe do something just special for your list? Maybe
Right.
do something, for example, if you've got a client who's got a special day coming up for them, how do you hitch a ride on a day that's special
That day.
for
Yeah.
them? So you work with accountants, and there's I don't know, I'm just making stuff up, but there's a National Accountant Day. I don't know.
Guaranteed there
How
is.
can you
Guaranteed.
honor your clients based on the holidays or events or special days that are associated with their industry? I read an article once about somebody, a company who does B2B, and who did something for their client because it was moving day for them. And so they were moving. So how do you look at what's important to your customers, and how do you hit the ride on that?
If I was an accounting firm, I would send all my clients a pie on National Pie Day. Or, you know, so because pie, you can play with numbers and do that whole thing. But, you know, you get, there's actually National Pie Day.
Yes.
What it would be March 14th. So 3.14, whatever. And if you played on that, you could hitch a ride on that day to say thank you to your community.
Yes, absolutely. There's so many ideas.
We'd love to hear your ideas out there, or from the audience. Do you have a day that you tend to have in your industry that's a non-traditional holiday, if you will? I mean, I don't know that these are official holidays, but they're holidays that you can create your own holiday.
Absolutely. We have a good buddy who created National Recess Day, built his whole brand around National Recess Day. So you can do that. It's a bit of a thing, but if it was worth it for your brand, you could definitely do that.
Right. And some people do Twitter chats around, you know, those holidays. They do Facebook Lives around those holidays.
Right.
For ways to kind of, you know, and even think of ways to hitch a ride on your own brand's holidays. Maybe it's your anniversary of your brand. You know, how do you hitch a ride on a specific day to make it an event beyond the everyday?
And, you know, another thing that you can do when you're hitching a ride, and I love this, it's an example that Warby Parker did a few years ago, is they couldn't afford to be involved in, I think what it's called, National Fashion Week or whatever. I've forgotten what it is. But all the advertisers were there, but they couldn't afford to have a booth. They couldn't afford to be part of it. So what they did is they staged an event at a library that was right beside the event where the big event was. And they hired a bunch of young people, didn't pay them a lot, to sit in the library and pretend they were reading these things. And they all had Warby Parker, different brands of glasses on. And the books that they were holding were covered with the name of the style of the glasses.
Oh,
and
that's great. So
Warby
like
Parker, Warby Parker just sent a bunch of invites to a bunch of advertising agency executives and invited them to drop by, and they did. And so they hitched a ride on somebody else's big buck buzz, but not in a way, as you were describing earlier, not in a way that's disrespectful or make anybody look bad. It was a very smart idea.
Yeah, I mean, to look at what else is going on this day in our area that I could make an event of it or piggyback, hitch a ride on that.
Create some sort of experience, that'll get some buzz, because, you know, people will share that kind of stuff on social media. If they see something really neat, they'll share it.
You know, we're talking about specific days, but I look at the concept of Casper mattresses doing these dreamery locations. I immediately think of, if you have anything to do with the napping or sleeping industry, how could you hitch a ride on that trend and be around the locations that they're having these, that they've opened these? They're not just temporary. It's an actual place that has opened. So how could you hitch a ride and say, I mean, my favorite app is Pizziz, and it's a power nap app. Well, what if you were going around and giving out something that talked about, you know, downloading this app, or, you know, so thinking of what might be a new opening of a place, a location, and how can you hitch a ride on that as well without being spammy.
Yeah, but I think the biggest challenge with all of this, for all of us and anybody who's listening, is we're all entrepreneurs. Most of us have smaller businesses. Is making sure we set aside the time to think about some of these things, because it's great. to wake up one morning and see that it's, I don't know, National Chocolate Day and be able to turn it around in 2 hours and send all your customers chocolates. But the reality is some of this takes planning, right? It takes at least taking some time on an airplane or something to just think and brainstorm with people to go, what could we do that would be, how could we hitch a ride on this and why?
Yeah. And I think step one, subscribe to some of these random calendars so that you see the events coming ahead of time. Look at your own industry and look at what are some of the things that our industry has done, so that you have those on your calendar to think ahead. But then brainstorming to me is always helpful because you just start getting different ideas. Sarah had a great, free Uber rides.
Yeah, free Uber rides on November 8th, which is Goodwill, free publicity, Hitch to Civic responsibility. So Sarah, was that a specific day? November 8th, is that like Goodwill Day or something? Or did Uber just decide to do that? I'm not sure, but it's a really good idea.
It sounds like it might be a Goodwill Day.
Yeah, Goodwill Day. And look how strategic it was, right? Because that's really what Uber does.
Yeah, which again, anybody could hitch a ride on that. And what goodwill can your company do on Goodwill Day?
Election Day. Now, of course, me being a good Canadian, I had no idea that November 8th is election day.
Okay, that's actually funny that didn't even dawn on me. But okay, so I'm thinking now Tylenol, Advil, Motrin could also be hitching a ride on that day.
Well, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but I can think of a lot of brands. Hairspray.
Exactly.
I can think of a lot of brands right on election day.
But I like that concept of doing something of goodwill as a brand. I mean, it's interesting. I just, on my way, you know me, every time I'm driving to Arizona, I blast through audiobooks. And I listened to a fabulous book on Wednesday by the founder of Charity Waters and Scott Harrison. And the book is called Thirst. I literally was crying as I'm driving. I'm being inspired as I'm driving. At one stop, I pulled over and signed up so that I could be a donor on Charity Water. I mean, this book was moving, but it made me think of, okay, how do you look for events, days that you could even piggyback so that you take your favorite charity and make that into something that you're doing something about, but on a specific day to get your community involved as well. So, I mean, that's another way which ties into kind of what the Uber campaign is doing, is taking something and saying, how can we, get your right on.
I remember a few years ago, a company we were working with, a online design company, at Christmas time, instead of sending out gifts to their customers, they sent out this huge oversized card, and it had a theme, and I forget what it was. But what made me think of it was your comment about charity. So in that instance, what you could do is there were 8 charities, I believe. And you could go to their site, and they wanted you to go to their site because they just had a new site. That's what it was. They had a new site. So they wanted you to go to the site. But what you could do is go to the site and choose which charity they were going to donate to on your behalf. So it was really brilliant because it got people to their site. So it was very strategic, but it was also productive for the customers, because we got to go in and choose. And I mean, there was a dog one, and there was a cancer one, and there was a kids one, but there was a wide variety that would cover off just about anybody. So it was very seductive. So that's another great point, is how could we talked earlier about hitching a ride for different reasons. And one of the reasons could be to promote your favorite charity or your customers, your clients' favorite charity.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great hitch to attach to specific events and days.
Right.
Yeah. I like that.
And so many different ways to hitch a ride. And again, I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes, particularly if we're solo entrepreneurs or we've got a small team, we think this is too much for us. You know what, we can't do that. The big brands can do it. But there really is a way to do it for just about everybody if you keep it simple, starting from wonderful social media posts like the one that you did, or just attending events. And sometimes we just need to step out of what we see as the traditional way of doing business. Look, pick think ahead. Think ahead for the rest of 2018, and pick one. Go on one of Gina's sites that she recommends. Pick one that may strategically tie in with your business, or you may be able to have some fun with, and just do one in the rest of the year and figure out some way to do it. That would be a great bonus for your brand.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, again, you could do anything. I mean, tomorrow's International Skeptics Day, so if you could play.
I wish I'd known about that one in advance.
Although more fun is on the 14th, is National Dessert Day. So, you know, there's so many. And on that site that I gave you, holidayinsights.com, I mean, literally there's so many. You don't want to go overboard. And I've seen brands do that where every day they post something. But pick the ones that you feel like you could go bigger with and do something that's really meaningful or fun that, and there's one thing to get engagement. There's another thing to do something really big with it.
Yeah, we went and looked, because the whole chocolate thing is part of our brand and will work for chocolate. We went and looked up the holidays during the year that have to do with chocolate. And we'll pick one or two of those and send something out to our customers on that day and do something on social media. So it doesn't just need to be about what your brand does, like the mattresses or sleeping, which is great, but it could also be with some of what I would call kind of a byline of your brand, something that's just part of your brand story that everybody knows. I don't know, maybe there's a National Ladder Day. We need to find out if there's a National Ladder Day.
There is. Okay, we'll have to look at that. There's got to be. There's
something.
There's got to be. There's a day for everything. Is what I always laugh. And if you don't see it on the one site, just type in National Ladder Day and see what pops. You know, and if it's not there, then there's a good way to make your own.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it is that time again. Another wind down. So, thank you for joining us. I hope you've gotten some great ideas. And I hope that sometime very soon you will hitch a ride and do something wonderful for your brand. And Gina, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Oh, I'm not here next week.
You're not here next week. I'll be here with a special mystery guest.
Oh, special mystery guest. There we go.
That means I don't know who it'll be yet.
Have a good weekend, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
I actually think it's in 2 weeks I'm not here, so we may have gotten everybody confused. But anyway, bye. Bye-bye.